just like starting it, you know? Hey everybody, I'm here with Anthony Gomez, and he looks after all of our service producers at our Hills campus. So we're gonna have a chat, talk about all things service producing. Can you just kind of give everybody an overview of what your role is, what the function of it is, and big picture, how it plays its part in church?
It's a point of contact for all of our creative teams who are on, so the worship leaders, the MDs, the TV team, lighting, audio. It just gives everybody like a central point of contact. Our job is to know everything that is meant to be happening, and maybe we don't know all of the inner workings and the crazy fine details, but overall big picture, know what we need to accomplish and the time that we need to accomplish it in, and basically what each team is responsible for, so that we can care for and value each team and what they need in a rehearsal setting, in a service setting, and ultimately just like supporting the service itself, and the pastors and the platform team.
You're kind of like the glue.
Yeah, like a glue, little sticky thing
except
right there
for,
in the middle.
Like a much fancier name than the glue. Let's be really practical and think about a weekend service. What types of things, what do you want to know beforehand? What do you want to know in rehearsal? Kind of what are your gauge points as you go through the morning?
I really stress to my teams 3 different things. I tell them you need to know the time, the task, and the teams. So like know what time you have to work with, when are you getting started, when do you need to transition to another thing, how long is everything going to take, when do we need to get people off stage or transition to a new segment of rehearsal or a new segment of service. Knowing your task, if lighting needs to do some programming, knowing what that involves and how long that might take, or knowing that the stage teams need X amount of time to work on their transitions, so maybe that is forgotten if you don't actually make sure that that everyone's aware of it. Before you walk in, you know who's rostered, this person's gonna be the head stage manager, this person is running the show in the TV room. And I always encourage my team to get there 10 minutes early, just to walk in, say hi, shake people's hands. Aside from that, knowing all of the different service elements, so knowing if we have baby dedications or if we have baptisms or stuff like that beforehand, and knowing what that entails. So if it's an item versus if it's like, if we're talking about communion, if it's an item, like a full-on item, or if it's just like song 4, we're doing a special song and taking communion, because that could have a huge impact on the rehearsal schedule, knowing that difference. Yeah, I always encourage my team to study, research, because at the end of the day, if you're the one who's meant to be valuing each of the teams and everything that's being, outworked, you need to know what it is that we're actually doing.
Who are you working with, like in a weekend service?
The MD, that's crucial for running the rehearsal for praise and worship. Making sure you're talking to like the TV producer, making sure you're talking to the stage manager, the head stage manager, making sure that you're talking to events if they're already in the room, specifically events hosting for like opening the doors, to make sure that you're not going to run over, or if you are going to run over, that's a conversation and not just a guarantee. I learned a long time ago that the best defense is a strong offense. So instead of being on the defensive, being on the back foot, and always wondering, how am I going to make this work? We're running over time. Trying to proactively communicate. Hey, MD, today we have a lot going on for whatever. This means that we have to be off stage by this time, or else it's going to affect TV, it's going to affect lighting, it's going to affect stage managers.
Do you guys do a pre-brief?
Yes, we do.
You do. What does that look like?
We just gather everyone, all of our teams, and it's really good because it means that we all get to, get in, see each other, say hi, shake somebody's hand, give someone a hug, and everybody gets focused on the same, on the same level. We talk about the practical implications of the service, the service structure, the set list, the song list. We talk about the rehearsal schedule, and then usually our worship leader or a key team member will give like a word of encouragement to the whole team, or help everybody get focused on the morning.
Often in a service, someone might be preaching and they're calling for scripture and it doesn't go up immediately. There's always a lot going on, right?
Yeah.
But what happens, and I'll put my hand up first and say guilty, is all the first 3 rows, all the heads swivel and they stare at you or whoever's wearing the headset. And you're aware of the problem, I'm sure. Can you talk a little bit about how you navigate that?
So oftentimes we get into a situation that is totally avoidable, or we knew that there was a slight chance of something going wrong, and being proactive in our discussion helps so much. So let's say a video is going up late. I would have already had a conversation with the TV producer before the service saying, hey, look, so we agree these are the 2 or 3 videos that we're playing. These are the times that they will be played. This is the overall track duration. And this is the cue, if let's say it's coming out of our offering and whoever's doing the offering walks off stage and says, turn your attention to the screen, we're gonna roll a video.
Nothing happens.
And then they walk off stage. Now, we've already had that discussion, so they know everything I know. Most of the time, our teams are great and they know it. But if there is an issue, now I know that it's not because they've fallen asleep in the back. And I know that it's not because of, the lack of knowledge, so there's probably an issue. First of all, making sure that the team is okay. And second of all, making sure that all the stakeholders there in the front row.
Who are the stakeholders?
The stakeholders. Are
those the head swivels that stare at you?
Those are the head swivels. So sometimes people think that they're being, micromanaging or like everybody's just getting into your business. But actually, these are our key leaders. The stakeholders are actually our key leaders. They're the ones who are responsible for making sure that the service goes well. And ultimately, they're often the time, like they're the people who, they have to write the reports and explain this happened, this is the impact.
Everyone wants the same outcome. We're on the same team.
Exactly. So it's actually massively important that they, being all of our key stakeholders, our pastors and our key leaders, that they feel confident and feel like not only is the situation under control, but that, the teams are okay, it's going to happen, and if it's not going to happen, it's going to be communicated quickly. I think proactive communication is really important, and obviously there's verbal and there's nonverbal. So I want all of the front row to be able to see the nonverbal stuff that, I'm on it, we're working on it, I'm not just taking a back seat.
Do you just naturally go, I'm just super chilled out, I've got this? Or did you ever have a time where you're like, this is super stressful? Did you have to learn how to just keep calm and go, okay, even if the problem isn't solved in this moment, I need to do this, I need to let these guys know we're on it?
It's something you have to make a decision on every single time. So for me, I always just remind myself that, I am my best self when I'm composed. If I start getting rocked, if I start getting, flustered or angry or really confused, that's when I start messing up. So I
can imagine it has like a chain reaction.
Oh, it has a massive reaction. I want to treat my teams well. Every team that I come into contact with, whether it's the teams in the back and I'm talking to them via comms, or whether it's maybe the stage manager who's right there and I'm glaring at them, whoever it is, I want to make sure that my response helps them.
I know sometimes I might go and visit another campus and notice that kind of the chain of communication works a little bit differently there. Can you just talk about at Hills? Does it ever get confusing who makes calls?
At times, in a short answer, yes, it does get confusing. When I played sports, my coach actually used to always say, someone has to own it. And if you are going to maybe catch a ball and you see that there's somebody else there, let them know that you're going to catch the ball, or let them know that it's theirs. And I think that same principle applies straight across what we do.
With new people that you're bringing through in that role, what does that look like as far as training? It's a huge role for somebody to have in a service. I can't imagine that someone's keen to serve and you go, great, you've got the 11:15 this weekend. So what does that look like as far as training?
Before we even really start training, I need to know what their personality is like. If it's someone who gets stressed very easily, then it probably won't be the best, location.
I feel quite confident saying that I do not need to be on your team. This is a helpful question.
I personally am an analytical type of person, so I will ask questions just to hear their responses and see what how they think, how they process things. And if it's somebody who gets flustered really easily or gets confused really easily, maybe that's, me saying something to them and then them not recalling it back to me correctly. That's a bit of a flag for me. I'm like, we'll see. Another thing would be how well they communicate. Just in terms of like their speech, if they talk really quietly and they're hard to understand, then that might not be the best person to have in the role, because everyone needs to hear them very clearly. Beyond that point, if I really think that they'll probably do well, or even if I think that they have a chance of doing pretty well, I start with like 3 months, pretty much like a 90-day, let's just see how you go. I want you to sit in the seat, hear the calls, get used to wearing the comms. Let's evaluate how quickly you adapt to that environment, because it can be really overwhelming if you've never been on comms, and then all of a sudden, at any given moment, we could have 4 different people contacting us at the same time.
Right.
And, and you've got to give direction. So when that's all happening, you can get a little overwhelmed, and that's fine, but it's what you do when you get overwhelmed.
Right.
That's what really matters. And
Right.
so if they can't handle it at that point, then, then it's a pretty telltale sign.
Right.
But if they're doing well with that, then the next step is for them to actually make some calls. So we just see how well they communicate, how clearly they communicate, if they're actually talking to the right people, and if they're making good decisions.
Right.
So have a listen to that. And then beyond that, it's letting them have an entire service, and maybe I'll sit next to them, or someone will sit next to them, and just hear the calls that they're making, and see how they go. Rehearsals are pretty relaxed. I
Right.
mean, maybe it's a lot of management, but when you get into service and you've got, your key pastors, some people actually just get really nervous around the pastors or the, the worship leaders. When you're in those moments, seeing how they actually respond,
Right.
how they break it down, how they communicate. One of my team members, just this last Sunday, we had a great service, and Pastor Brian decided that he was going to start the service at the very back of the auditorium in the CC here at the Hills. That was communicated very last minute. He actually walked up directly to the person and said, "I'm going to go up the back." And that person could have left it, but they actually came back with more questions and said, which section, can you point to the section that they'll be at?
Right.
Because they knew TV needed to know, they knew that lighting needed to know, they knew that the audio teams needed to know kind of where that audio is going to be, which pocket they're going to
Right.
be, adjusting for. So they asked that extra question, and just doing that extra question helped save
It
so
set up
much
every
panic.
other team.
Exactly.
Right.
So when that call was made, it was very brief, very
Yeah.
quick, but them having the mental acuity to be able to say, hey, wait, there's more that I need to know so I can value these other teams.
Right.
It just meant that when Pastor Brian actually did start speaking, we had lights up on him. We had cameras ready to go, and the audio teams were aware, and
Right.
nobody was surprised and
Yeah, or
panicked.
playing catch up. What do you find that you on your team, whether it's people that have been doing this for 5 years or 1 year, what are the things you find that you're addressing regularly, or we need to keep getting better at this? I know we're all growing all the time, but I find that we don't seem to move very far away from the basics.
So I've given my team a few things that I want them to always have in mind, and one of those things is awareness. You just can't solve problems. You can't catch things that could become problems. You can't value people well if you don't have awareness. It's awareness of the service and all the elements that are happening. Sometimes it's awareness that somebody's having a pastoral issue and being able to help care for them. And sometimes it's being aware of, maybe a pastor about to go on stage and they're just coughing a lot, and being able to give them a cough drop in
Right.
water. Simple things,
Yeah.
but also big things. Another thing is having a big picture mindset. With lighting, let's say I'm talking to the location, the campus pastor, and he's wanting more lights up in the back section so that people aren't just out there in the dark, and we're during an MC moment. That's great, and we need to focus on that. But while you're focusing on that, can you also think about the bigger context?
Yeah.
So if the team member gets hung up on that lighting situation, way up in the back, and they're talking to lights, and they forget, we're in an MC section. We're about to go to offering. This person needs a microphone. The band needs a transition.
Right.
They're forgetting all these other different things, and they're focused on that lighting. Well, they might nail that lighting, but the lighting guy is there to help with the lighting. So being able to communicate that clearly and then let go instead of being there to micromanage every little aspect of it. So I guess it's that type of stuff. Staying big picture and not getting hung up on the details. One of the biggest challenges I've come up against leading this team is actually being able to clarify for my team how we fit into the greater context of the teams.
Right.
Because every once in a while, you might have a team member who butts up against another, maybe a TV producer or a lighting operator or an audio person, and being able to actually help address that factor. Because I think one thing I've noticed is it all comes down to value. If we value the other person who is operating or who is producing or who is doing whatever, and understand that they are skilled and they are gifted in their area, and working with them and trying to partner with them to make the whole service better.
Yeah.
If my objective is to make sure that they know that I'm right and I'm the boss,
Right.
then I'll just hand it
You've
over
missed
and
it.
I'm going to find another team to be a part of.
Right.
But if my objective is to support the team that are on platform and the pastors who are leading the service, and also to cooperate with the other team leaders, well then, every single service is going to be a great opportunity to achieve that, and help them feel valued and gifted in their own area, and like pulling out the best in them.
So good.
Yeah.
Well, we're blessed to have you, and thanks.
Thank you.
That was hugely helpful. Learned a lot about service producing, and that I'm probably not going to do it in my future, which is great, which is a win for everybody.
Annie, we've always got a spot for you on the table.
No, that's okay. Anyways, thanks heaps.